Picture this, August 5th, 2024. Dhaka, Bangladesh. The air is thick with tension, the streets humming with anticipation. Protesters, chanting Allahu Akbar, are met with a deafening barrage of bullets. Now, you might be thinking, what could drive thousands to risk their lives like this? The answer lies in years of mounting authoritarianism and a quota system that felt like a straitjacket for the nation's youth. This isn't just a protest, it's a crucible, forging a new chapter in Bangladesh's history. Let me walk you through what led to that fateful day, and why Jatrabari became ground zero. The crowd, students, laborers, ordinary citizens faced a wall of police armed with military-grade rifles. Imagine the psychological impact, facing down not just rubber bullets, but live ammunition. That's escalation, a term in crowd control that means moving from non-lethal to lethal force. It's a line you can't uncross. But here's where it gets personal. One man, undeterred, continues to film capturing history as it unfolds. You can almost feel the adrenaline, the fear, the sense that this moment could change everything. The stakes? Nothing less than the future of an entire nation. So what brought Bangladesh to this boiling point? The answer is as much about systemic injustice as it is about hope. And as gunfire echoed through Jatrabari, that hope was put to the ultimate test. Let's rewind and unpack the roots of this crisis, because understanding the why is the only way to make sense of the chaos that followed. Now, you might wonder what exactly sparked this massive uprising. The answer? A controversial quota system. About 30% of government jobs were reserved for the families of Independence War veterans. On paper, that sounds patriotic. But in practice, it bred resentment among young job seekers, especially students. Take the word systemic discrimination. It means unfair treatment built right into the rules. For students like Razal Mahmood, the feeling was clear. I realized I could become a victim of this inequality and might not get a good job. Imagine preparing for years only to realize merit might not be enough. A quota system, when abused, becomes a bottlenecker term in economics describing an obstacle that slows progress for everyone else. Hypothetically, if you're a bright graduate, what do you do when your dreams are blocked by policies favoring others simply by birthright? That disillusionment became the match that lit the powder keg. As July 2024 rolled in, students coordinated mass protests. The message was clear. The movement can't be stopped by the police. Little did they know, their demands for fairness would soon collide with the full force of a government determined to hold on to power no matter the cost. Let me tell you a story about a turning point. On July 16th, 23-year-old Abu Syed stood at the forefront of the protests. He faced a mass of officers alone, but unyielding. What happened next would transform protest into revolution. Syed was shot repeatedly with shotguns loaded with lethal metal pellets, a method known as crowd dispersal. But here, it became a tool of repression. He died before reaching the hospital, his death instantly becoming a rallying cry. Now you might be thinking, does one person's sacrifice really make a difference? In social movements, there's a phenomenon called martyrdom effect, the power of a single loss to galvanize collective action. Syed's killing was broadcast everywhere, igniting outrage like a spark in dry grass. After that, no amendment to the quota law could appease the protesters. They declared it a people's uprising. Suddenly, what started as policy protest turned into a full-scale revolution. In this moment, fear faded and resolve hardened. The government's harsh tactics had backfired, turning victims into heroes and protest into destiny. Let's step into the shoes of the government. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina addresses the nation, insisting the authorities have shown sufficient patience and tolerance. But if you're on the street watching friends disappear, it sure doesn't feel like patience. The government's next move? A nationwide communications blackout, shutting down internet access, a classic tactic in information suppression. Think of it as cutting the wires on a telephone switchboard in wartime. Disorienting, isolating, and dangerous. Now, if you were a protest organizer, how would you adapt? By joy, a student leader said, "Our first plan was to reunite everyone when the internet was shut down. Resilience and improvisation became the new normal." At the same time, Hasina ordered police and security forces to use lethal force. This wasn't just rumor. BBC verified a leaked recording of her directing the crackdown. That's command responsibility, legal term meaning leaders are accountable for the actions of their subordinates. With the stage set for confrontation, both sides braced for what would become an unprecedented wave of violence. Why Chhatrabari? It's not just any neighborhood, it's a critical junction connecting Dhaka with the port city of Chattogram. In logistics, that's called a choke point. Control it, and you control movement in and out of the capital. The area is a melting pot. Students, laborers, families all crammed around a heavily guarded police station. For protesters, blocking the Chhatrabari highway symbolized cutting off the regime's lifeline. Clashes here quickly turned fierce. The police, armed with military-grade rifles and tear gas launchers, responded with what they call graduated force. But on July 20th, that gradation disappeared. Over 400 live rounds fired. Let that number sink in too. 444 bullets in a single day. Imagine being there, bullets flying, tear gas choking the air, neighbors hiding in alleys. This wasn't crowd control, it was urban warfare. Imam Hassan Taim, a 19-year-old student, was beaten and shot by police, dying later that day. Chhatrabari became both a symbol and a warning. When the line between policing and combat blurs, civilian lives are the first casualty. Let's humanize this. Sawan and Miraz, two friends from Chhatrabari, embodied the protest's heart. Miraz was the glue, always organizing, always hopeful. When the call came to march, he said, "If we don't go today, we won't be able to forgive ourselves." In social psychology, this is called collective efficacy, sense that together, ordinary people can achieve extraordinary things. Miraz inspired not just Sawan, but a whole neighborhood. Now, imagine your best friend, your brother in arms, standing beside you as history unfolds. That's not just activism. That's kinship forged in fire. But with every step towards the front line, the risk grew. Miraz kept filming, documenting not just violence but resilience. He believed change was within reach, even as bullets flew. Their story reminds us, behind every headline are real people, friends, siblings, sons whose courage and loss define a movement. August 5th march for Dhaka. Thousands converge, determined to reach the Prime Minister's residence. The government, sensing an existential threat, orders a total curfew. Entry points to the city are sealed, what security officials call a lockdown perimeter. If you're a protest leader, how do you rally your forces? Baijoy and others plead with police. You have committed many crimes, murdered our brothers. Despite this, we forgive you. We want you to join us. That's radical empathy, offering forgiveness even in the face of brutality. But the police double down, violence erupting outside Chhatrabari station. The army arrives, forming a human barrier between police and protesters. Tactically, this is called de-escalation, but it's a fragile truce. Rumors swirl. The Prime Minister is about to resign. The crowd surges forward, hope overriding fear. For a brief moment, it feels like the revolution has won. Yet, as history shows, power rarely yields quietly. The coming moments would shatter both hope and bodies. Let's pause and take a breath, because what comes next is harrowing. At 2:40, 3 p.m., the army withdraws from the police station. Seconds later, police open fire, again indiscriminate, relentless. That's what's known as a kill zone in military terms of space, where escape becomes nearly impossible. Bullets rip through the crowd, striking not just protesters, but homes. People hide behind walls, in alleys, desperately calling loved ones. Sawan and Miraz are separated in the chaos. Miraz continues filming, capturing his final moments. Now, you might ask, why didn't the army intervene? In crisis management, there's something called operational ambiguity, when roles blur and accountability vanishes. The army's passive stance left civilians exposed. When the shooting finally stops, the toll is staggering. At least 50, 2 dead, countless injured. Sawan finds Miraz's body among the Falena personal loss that echoes across a broken nation. In these moments of chaos, the government's power fractured, but the human cost was unbearable. The question now, who bears responsibility for this bloodshed? As the dust settles, the need for justice takes center stage. Survivors and families demand answers. Who gave the order? Who pulled the trigger? In law, this is called a chain of command, a hierarchy of authority from the lowest officer up to the Prime Minister. Police at Jatrabari insist they didn't act alone. Orders came from above: Chief Detective Harun or Rashid, Dhaka Police Chief Habibur Rahman, Home Minister Asaduzaman Khan, and at the top, Sheikh Hasina herself. That's vertical integration in organizational theory. Every level connected, every action traceable. You might ask, if instructions were so clear, why is justice so slow? Here's where impunity, a culture of evading accountability, comes in. Despite arrests, many responsible officers flee or hide, shielded by the very system meant to discipline them. Meanwhile, Hasina and her home minister take refuge abroad, charged with crimes against humanity back home. International law calls this universal jurisdiction, the idea that some crimes are too grave for borders to protect the accused. Justice, like hope, is a slow burn. But the people of Bangladesh aren't giving up their search for truth and accountability. Let me leave you with a final thought. August 5th was both a day of liberation and a day of mourning. The fall of a 15-year regime brought hope, but for families like Miraz's, the pain is raw and unending. In trauma psychology, we talk about collective grief, a society mourning together, finding strength in shared loss. For Bangladesh, rebuilding will mean not just justice for the dead, but healing for the living. Yet, the spirit of those who marched, those who filmed, who forgave, who stood their ground remains unbroken. One mother says, "We console ourselves by thinking that my brother's sacrifice helped free the country." That's resilience, the ability to rise, time and again, from the ashes. Now, you might be wondering, what's next for Bangladesh? The answer lies in the hands of its people, who have tasted both tyranny and freedom. Their vigilance is the best safeguard against future abuses. So, as we look ahead, remember, democracy is not a destination, but a journey. And for Bangladesh, that journey has just begun.